Today we're driving the newly refreshed 2020 Hyundai Ioniq Hybrid. This is the top of the line limited trim, just around $32,200 MSRP. It's powered by a 1.6 liter Atkinson cycle 4-cylinder that makes 139 horsepower. I first drove this a couple years ago on a local launch, and I did enjoy this car overall, but it was a pretty quick drive, and I've had some more time to spend in it this week. Let's take you on a walk around, we'll go for a drive, and we'll talk about some of its pros, cons, what I like, what I don't. I do like the way it looks. This new grille, some of the refreshed lines and accents, they've done a really nice job cleaning this car up aesthetically, and I think it actually looks pretty good even with these blade style hybrid wheels. This is definitely a good alternative to a Prius if you don't want a Prius, though I will say right off the bat, I don't think it's quite as nice of a car or nice of a hybrid as the Prius. But there are some positives here. You do have this opening hatchback area with quite a lot of luggage space in the back. No spare tire, unfortunately. And the dual clutch transmission in this is a neat selling point for those who just want a little bit more of a sporty driving experience and can't stand the eCVTs in a lot of hybrids these days. Inside and out, it's pretty spacious. Really no complaints about the packaging of this car. I have plenty of room in the back seat, space to put my feet under the seat at my 5'10" height. And it's quite comfortable back here. Get a couple of cup holders, pretty good visibility throughout the cabin. A lot of gray, a lot of plastics, but overall, this car feels quite nice from a quality perspective. Pretty in line with everything else from Hyundai these days. Yeah, I do like the way this thing looks. It's kind of a combination between the Volt, the Prius. It has that same hunched over look to it. Of course, it has the split window so that they can have a really as little of a decrease for aerodynamics there on the rear windshield. So as you can see, we have an updated infotainment system for this 2020 Ioniq and some different climate controls. Everything is haptic touch. Honestly, this is a little bit of a disappointment for me because I really loved Hyundai's use of buttons and knobs, but it does look sharp. I don't think it'll age well though. This gloss black is already showing some signs of wear, and it's just a little bit more tedious to use than the standard buttons and knobs. That said though, it's not the worst system in the world. Auto climate control works just fine, and that's probably what you're going to be using in most scenarios. We have a larger touch screen here, Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, all the good stuff. We'll do a sound test later on with this fantastic Harman Kardon sound system. But otherwise, let's take this thing for a drive. Pretty standard reverse camera. Also shows you what objects you're near with the proximity sensors. There are two drive modes in this car, Eco and Sport, and you change them just by moving the shifter over. I will say that overall this DCT is tuned for economy. It's a very efficient transmission, and it's definitely sportier than a CVT, but it's going to shift at the lowest possible RPM, and DCTs are good to minimize drivetrain loss.
Say this Ioniq definitely has one of the most natural and progressive brake pedals of any regen hybrid car that I've driven. It feels about as normal as it gets, which is pretty awesome. I know Hyundai spent a lot of time working on that, and that is one of the big positives of this car. Let's see how it handles here. We'll even put it into sport mode. In normal driving mode, the paddle shifters on the back of the wheel will increase or decrease your regen level, so the amount of deceleration that the car experiences while putting energy back into the battery pack. I will say I'm not the biggest fan of the regen system in this car. It's not a progressive off like a lot of the one-pedal driving cars. It's more of like an on and off switch with a throttle. So your throttle's either engaged, or after a certain point you let off and you get full regen. So I've mostly been driving this car in just normal mode without any regen, with coasting and then using the brakes to get most of my regenerative braking. It does drive about as normal as a car can drive, though, besides a slightly muted throttle response. I mean, this feels about as normal as it gets. You really wouldn't know this is a hybrid. The transition between battery power and the engine switching on is completely unnoticeable. It's seamless, it's silent. It's kind of hard to tell when this car is in electric mode. The only indicator you get is the EV light that lights up in the dashboard. And then when you switch the transmission over into sport mode, the paddle shifters become actual paddle shifters that can change gear. Let's see what it does for a 0 to 60 here. I'd say overall it's quick enough. Definitely not one of the faster cars on the road, but it has an acceptable amount of power. Ride quality is about what you'd expect. It's pretty comfortable. These have slightly higher profile tires. I know this limited trim has the 17-inch wheel, so it's going to ride a little bit firmer than, like the base level trims like the blue. But honestly, it's pretty acceptable. It's a nice ride handling balance. So from a driving perspective, this feels pretty much like a normal car. This has some pretty cool, safety tech to it. You have your radar-guided cruise control that works quite well. Not really that buggy. You can kind of set the tendencies to it. Let's say, a car merges over or you pass a slower vehicle. You can set whether you want, the the car to pass quickly, to pass slowly, to respond quickly, to respond slowly. So that's nice. I do wish there was an easier way to get into the lane keep assist. So let's see here. You go into driving assist, and lane following is a few menus in. And it does work quite well. Lane following is separate from highway driving assist, so the car will sense when you're on a highway at 70 miles an hour, and it'll actually keep the wheel, it'll do all the steering for you for up to 30 seconds, and then it'll give you a little warning. At 45 seconds, it'll cut off. So you have 45 seconds to just keep your hands off the wheel, or, you know, before it prompts you again to put your hands on the wheel, which is kind of nice. Even lane following works pretty well. It's a little bit annoying having it come on every time you engage cruise control, so I've kind of left it off this week. I wish it were a little bit easier to turn on and off, but I do like the highway driving assist. It's one of those systems that doesn't feel like the car's taking complete control. You can easily dodge a pothole or avoid something in the road. It doesn't feel like the steering is resisting you. Hyundai does a pretty good job with these systems, and this Ioniq is right up there. Even the handling's pretty good. This is a small, lightweight car. I will say, even though this is a DCT, it doesn't feel like one. It feels more like a traditional automatic. Any complaints? Well, to be honest, I've struggled getting over 45 miles to the gallon this week. This is rated for 55 in the city, 54 on the highway, and has a great drag coefficient. But maybe it's the cold. It's been 30, 35 degrees outside, and I've really struggled to get over 50 miles to the gallon on this thing. Hypermiling yesterday, I was able to get about 52, 53, but really, I haven't had an easy time getting the gas mileage out of this, and that's probably due to the cold. Tire pressures are at about 36 psi, 37 psi all the way around. That should be adequate for this car and the weight. You could pump it up a little bit, bring it up to 40, probably get some better fuel economy, but and I will say these seats do keep you pretty well positioned in the car under hard cornering. They're nice seats. I was a little bit uncomfortable in them yesterday on a longer trip. But today I think I've got them adjusted a little bit better. They're not too bad. I definitely would recommend sitting in this for a little bit of time before making your decision. I think for some people they'll be just fine. For others they may be a little bit uncomfortable. They're hard seats, and you do get some lumbar adjustment, quite a bit of adjustability with them, but something to note. Otherwise, though, I don't really have any complaints about this car. It's fantastic. You have great visibility, excellent road manners, really nice levels of NVH. It's attractive in here. There's no shakes and rattles. I do have a little bit of a deck rattle in the back, but that could be something that's just specific to this car. Right now, we're in highway driving assist mode. So I set it to 70 miles an hour. It says auto mile per hour, and I assume that means it'll kind of adjust as speed limits adjust. But it's very comfortable. As you can see, I can really keep my hands off the wheel for quite a while. It stays really nicely centered in the lane, and it's just prompting me every 30 seconds or so to put my hands on the wheel. A lot of the information in here that Hyundai gives you is really nice and well thought out. You can see you can See your electric motor use there, 3.1 kilowatts. Our fuel economy, 43.3 miles to the gallon. We have a lot of different things that we can see in the menus here. Our energy flow meter, speedometer, cruise control, gas mileage, long-term gas mileage. You've got a compass, your tire pressure monitors, and then of course all your settings. The materials in here feel really nice too. Hyundai has a really nice quality leather that they put on their steering wheels and their shifter. And the buttons and touch points and everything that you press feel really nice quality. There's almost like an Audi feel to the steering wheel. And the flat bottom is kind of cool. It's a little bit sporty, a little bit different from most of your hybrids out there. This is pretty well poised around corners. It does have a nice level of mechanical grip. And I do like this touchscreen. It's nice and high res. Pretty sharp too. Around town in this thing, you definitely have plenty of power to get around, no problem. Let's do a little sound test. This Harman Kardon audio system is really pretty fantastic. Really nice sound system, great audio levels, great bass, really clear, really rich tones, no vibrations from the speakers or anything. Harman Kardon did a really nice job putting this together. So, Ioniq or Prius? It's a really good question because I just drove the new Prius. And the difference is, if you have no preferences or no internal biases going in, I'm going to say, honestly, the Prius is a better hybrid. It's a better car. It just feels like a more... it's just a nicer driving experience. But this Ioniq is really, 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 really close. I think the Prius is one of Toyota's best built and highest quality cars. And this Ioniq is also maybe one of Hyundai's best built and highest quality cars from a driving standpoint and a feel standpoint. So, you know, they're very, very close competitors. It kind of depends what you prefer. This is definitely a little bit sportier to drive than the Prius, and that's mostly down to the transmission. But the seats are a little bit uncomfortable. This trunk rattle's driving me nuts. Everything else, though, this feels about as normal as a car as you can get, and I do appreciate that. That is nice. So, you know, it's kind of a little bit of a toss-up. In my mind, they're pretty evenly matched. If it were my money, I'd kind of have a tough choice deciding between the two. But that's why we have competitors in this market. I am a little bit curious to see what people are getting in the real world with fuel economy in warmer climates or in warmer seasons. Probably the best way to look that up and find out if you're interested is to go on
Fuelie or a website like that where you can see people's real world use of these cars and kind of figure out what people are actually getting over tens of thousands of miles. Otherwise, pretty top marks for this Ioniq. The more I drive it, the more I do enjoy it. It's just a nice little runabout car. I've seen a lot of these being used for Uber and Lyft, and it's a comfortable, fuel-efficient, low-maintenance vehicle that's going to have really low running costs, probably going to be very reliable. It's got a great warranty, so not a lot of bad things to say about this. So you can hear here at lower speeds, you get a little bit of noise from the battery, but overall it's pretty quiet. And once you get some charge in the system, you can tool around in neighborhoods around town without any issues in full electric mode. And you get a decent amount of acceleration too. You don't feel like you're holding up traffic when you're doing it. Alright, well, while I'm here in some random neighborhood, let's park it and wrap this review up. Thanks again for watching, guys. We will see you in the next video. We got 35 miles to the gallon that whole trip, that whole drive, even ragging on it. This gets pretty good fuel economy. Though that said, after getting 46 miles to the gallon last week in the Civic Si, I don't know. Would I rather have this or a Civic Si? Get the same fuel economy? That's a tough one.